All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we will now get into talking about um, the Raiders Browns game, as well as talking about Nick Chubb returning to practice. So, yeah, this was another rough one for the Browns. And again, I fell into the trap, I guess, because when I saw that Max Crosby and Devontae Adams were ruled out for this game, I switched my pick from the Raiders to the Browns. And now it actually did get off to a good start because the Browns were up 10-0. So I was like, okay, this looks like this is going to end up working out. But that was not the case because then the Browns they did score a touchdown, but it was a defensive touchdown. So let's kind of go through it. So the Browns, they went 15 plays, 70 yards, over 9 minutes of time of possession down the field. An impressive drive, and Watson connected with Whitehurt for a 1-yard touchdown. And that made it 7-0. Raiders punted, then the Browns put together another drive. Dustin Hopkins kicked a 56-yard field goal. So it was 10-0, so I was feeling good. I'm like, okay. But then the Raiders, they put together an 11-play, 70-yard drive, almost 6 minutes of time possession, and Trey Tucker from 3 yards out scores a touchdown to make it 10-7. Browns punted. Raiders then responded with a 52-yard field goal by Daniel Carlson, so that made it 10-10, and that was the score at the half. Then the Raiders, they opened up with a field goal drive, and Carlson kicked a 34-yard field goal to make it 13-10. And then Deshaun Watson threw a pick on the next drive. He hit Amari Cooper, but I don't know what happened on that play, but it just got batted up in the air. I don't know what happened with Amari Cooper on that play, but somehow the ball just ended up in the air, and it ricocheted off of Amari Cooper and into the air, and the Raiders picked it off, and they turned that into a touchdown. Turner from 18 yards out scored. I don't know how. I watched the replay on that, or the highlight of that, and I don't know how the Browns didn't tackle him before he got to the end zone. But it was 20-10. Browns punted, but then the Raiders fumbled. Zamir White fumbled, and it was picked up by Rodney McLeod, and he scored from 25 yards out. So that made it 20-16, and then Dustin Hopkins missed the extra point. Then a lot of punts in the fourth quarter. And then the Browns were driving. They got down to the Raiders 9, 4th and 3. Deshaun Watson is sacked. And that's how the game ends. For the Raiders, something that they were struggling to do so far this year was running the football. They ran the ball for 152 yards. Alexander Mattison had 60 yards on the ground. Zamir White had 50 yards on the ground. DJ Turner had an 18-yard run for a touchdown. That was what I brought up before. Brock Bowers even had a run in this game for 12 yards. And they had 2 rushing touchdowns, like I said. Jacoby Myers was their leading receiver, was targeted 10 times, 5 receptions for 49 yards. Trey Tucker, 5 for 41. Harrison Bryant, 2 for 21. Brock Bowers, 2 for 19. Like I said, Zamir White had a fumble. Raiders had 3 sacks in this game despite missing Max Crosby. And then for the Browns, again, another lackluster performance by their offense, and more specifically Deshaun Watson. 24 of 32 for 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Yeah, just still wasn't good. Still wasn't that good. Jerome Ford had 10 carries for 58 yards. Watson had 8 for 32. Their leading receiver was Jerry Jeudy. He had 6 for 72. Amari Cooper had 4 for 35. And he would have had a lot more. Also, the Browns defense had 2 sacks. I forget which drive it was. Was it the... No, it wasn't the second to last. It was in the fourth quarter. Yeah, here it is. So it was 1st and 10 from the Cleveland 18-yard line. There was about, a little over 10 minutes left in the game. And Watson connects with Amari Cooper, who was wide open for an 82-yard touchdown. Browns probably end up winning the game. Or at least, they're up by 3. Raiders maybe kick a field goal, whatever the case is. But gets called back for holding. That was a killer. That was a killer penalty in this game. So Amari Cooper, he would have went from having only 35 receiving yards to over 100 and a touchdown. And that would have been a huge. If that ended up panning out and the Browns ended up winning, that would have been such a. I mean, at least a huge boost for this team, or some sort of a boost going forward. But that just shows you the kind of season that the Browns are having right now. And you look at Deshaun Watson and his stats so far: 4 touchdowns to 3 picks. He hasn't been great. And this season is continuing to slowly slip away from this team. You got the Commanders coming up on your schedule. You got the Eagles after that, the Bengals, the Ravens, the Chargers, the Saints, the Steelers twice, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Dolphins, hopefully with Tua back, the Ravens. You got the Broncos in there as well, and their defense is playing well. Again, this is a team last year that went 11-6 with 5 different starting quarterbacks. You got to do something. And I think ultimately, maybe you got to sit Deshaun Watson down. I keep saying it, but he's not playing great. Now, I don't want to say this loss is all on him, because I feel like you could point to some of the other games, and like the Cowboys game, he was awful. Well, really, the Browns collectively were awful. And you probably put more of the blame on him, but, I mean, they got an 82-yard touchdown with Amari Cooper, and it gets called back for a holding penalty. They miss an extra point. But, in between them being up 10-0 to that defensive touchdown that got them back within a score, the offense didn't do anything. But the Browns are missing guys. They're missing guys on the offensive line. They're also missing Nick Chubb, who could be coming back soon. We'll get into that in a second. But with Deshaun Watson, I really don't expect them to do much. I didn't have them making the playoffs. I mean, I had them, winning 9-10 games, but right now you're 1-3. So they got to figure something out quick, because this season is going to continue to unravel. But now let's talk about some good news. So Nick Chubb returned to practice, and the Browns have opened up that 3-week window for him to return. And if they end up not activating him, then he's going to be out for, I believe, the rest of the year, which is not going to happen. He is going to play within the next 3 weeks. Now, it seems like the Browns are going to hold off for as long as possible until they feel like he's ready, and they will activate him. So that 3-week window probably going to end up being activated on that 3rd week. And Nick Chubb could definitely make a big difference in this offense. It's just he's coming off of a significant knee injury, and the Browns are going to want to ease him back into it. And they haven't been running the football great with Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman. Now they're also getting Nyheim Hines back too, and he's a change of pace back. That receiving back. So they're getting some reinforcements coming out of the backfield. Again, the offensive line you hope can get healthy, and then maybe this offense looks a little better. But I just think ultimately what is going to hold this team back is the quarterback position. So, but it's great news that Nick Chubb is, getting close to a return. And, it's going to take some time. I mean, look, he might not be great this year. They really might ease him back into it. And, maybe like much later in the year, that's when, he gets it going and they give him maybe a little bit more of a workload. Early on, maybe he just, he's going to play, but, it's mostly going to be Jerome Ford and Deontay Foreman, I guess, taking away, most of the workload from him. Because, again, you want to ease him back into it. That was a gruesome knee injury. And it's not the first time that Nick Chubb has gone through something like this. But you just hope he rebounds from it. But the fact that he's back at practice, it's very encouraging, and and I think they were saying he's kind of ahead of schedule. So maybe he's back earlier than that 3rd week. We'll see. But No, it's really really encouraging just to see Nick Chubb back. So, but the Browns need all the help they can get right now because this season, like I said, is quickly unraveling. And again, they let Joe Flacco walk. I mean, look, how would Joe Flacco have been over the course of a full season? Probably would not be great. But at least to be the backup, I think the Browns kind of made a mistake letting him walk. Because look what he did with the Colts. Their young star quarterback gets hurt. He comes in. Colts win the game. Didn't miss a beat. Why couldn't the Browns keep him? And again, it could be, and I said it, and I heard this from somewhere, and it's true, that they didn't want, the Browns maybe didn't want fans chanting for Flacco when Deshaun Watson's struggling. They didn't want to have to deal with that. So the easy thing was, all right, thank you for that miracle run. We appreciate it. And he ended up going elsewhere. Colts made a wise decision bringing him in. Because if he has to play this week, and we'll see what happens with that game against Jacksonville. Because they might be without Jonathan Taylor now. But, yeah, it really does make you wonder. But then again, never should have let go of Baker Mayfield. Never should have let him go. Shouldn't have done it. But that's what they decided to do. So, yeah, Browns continue to struggle. They dropped to 1-3 on the season, and I forgot to put up the scoring graphic. But yeah, they dropped to 1-3 on the season. Raiders improved to 2-2. And when it comes to the Raiders, we'll see if they end up trading Davante Adams. We'll see if that ends up happening. But, I mean, probably will happen, but who's it going to be that ends up getting him? And also Amari Cooper for the Browns. Is he going to end up getting traded? We'll have to wait and see. But at least some positive news on the Browns front with Nick Chubb coming back. But Browns got to start winning some football games. So, the next opportunity is against the Commanders, which they're one of the hottest teams in the NFL. So, that is going to be a tough game for the Browns and their defense. They're going to have their hands full. So, when we come back from our next break, we will talk about the Jaguars now. They lost a tough game to the Houston Texans, a division rival. We'll get into that, what happened. So, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.